Hello once again, parishioners of St. John's, friends of St. John's, seekers of truth, whoever you might be that you have stumbled upon this video. It's good to be with you. It's good to be able to spend some time with you today. By way of a reminder, I'm Father Bob Horahan, the relatively new rector of the Co-Cathedral of St. John the Evangelist in Rochester. And as a way for me to get to know the community a little bit better and for the community to get to know me a little bit better, throughout this past month, we've actually been collecting questions from parishioners. We've launched a little bit of an Ask Father Bob initiative. So they've been submitting questions and we've been collating them, and I'm going to answer them. Not all of them, actually, I should be honest. I'm going to answer some of them today because we got quite a few. So in case you did submit a question and you don't hear it answered in this particular video, stay tuned because I will come back to them. So let's get rolling, huh? We're gonna start off with a few softballs just to get me a little bit more at ease before we delve into heavier stuff. So, question number one, what do you think of the ongoing situation in Gaza? Okay, that's not a softball. We're going to go to a different one. So here's a nice, easy one. Sorry, just wanted to lighten the mood a little bit. It's obviously an atrocious situation and we need to be continuing to pray for peace and reconciliation there. But here's a simpler one that I can answer very easily. Are your parents still alive? And do you have brothers and sisters? And in fact, the answer to the first question is no. My parents are both deceased. This year, in fact, 2025 marks 10 years since my mom passed away and 20 years since my dad. Obviously, they're still very much with me and encouraging me in spirit. And I know that the legacy that they have left is something that I continue to draw on as I continue my ministry. And so I'm very grateful for all that they left me. And do I have brothers and sisters? I do, as a matter of fact. I am the youngest of 8. And of the 8 of us, 7 are still on our earthly pilgrimage. One brother did pass a few years ago due to complications from diabetes, sadly. So we're continuing to hold him obviously in our hearts. But yes, the other 7 of us are still around and healthy and hearty and hale. So that's the first question, or 2 questions rather. So question number 2, what is your favorite book of the Bible? I think I would probably say the Song of Songs. It's one that is not necessarily all that well known. If you don't know it, if you're not familiar with it, it's part of the Old Testament. It's part of what we call the wisdom literature. And it's a beautiful expression of the power of love. And it's set up in a dialogue form. And you have this just tenderness and intensity and genuineness of love that is expressed between the various figures, the bride and the bridegroom basically in it. On a spiritual level then, it becomes a beautiful window into the immense tenderness and intensity of God's love for us. And the more that we can just immerse ourselves in the personal touch of the Lord's love, the more we will be able to follow him and witness to him. So I find that a very profound book that I can go to and have a deep spiritual experience with. So another one that's kind of related to this is, what is your favorite scripture verse? And there's a handful that come to mind, but one that I'm going to accent is Galatians 2:20. And one of the reasons why that's very dear to me is actually connected to what I just said about the tenderness and the intensity of God's love for us. So Galatians 2:20, Paul says, I live my life by faith in the Son of God. And here's the part that I love. Who loved me and gave himself for me. I love the fact that he goes to the first person singular in that moment. Because in that expression, in that language, he is expressing the recognition of how Christ loves him particularly, him intimately. Sometimes as we engage in the spiritual life, as we go through the work of pursuing holiness, and we hear of God's great saving love for the world, Christ's saving act for all of humanity, we can sometimes get ourselves a little bit lost in the shuffle. We recognize, yes, Christ died for all of humankind of all time in history. And And sometimes we forget that that means that he also died for me particularly. So I love the fact that Paul at that moment speaks to the intimacy of Christ's love for him and Paul's immersion in that he recognizes that. So that'd be one of my favorite ones. What NFL team do you cheer for? The one that's going to get me in the least trouble, depending on the company I'm keeping, frankly. I'm just not that much of a sports follower. So I enjoy watching the game. I enjoy it as a social event, but it's not something that I really engage in with all that much zeal and energy and ardor. So for those of you who are really, really hoping that I'd be a Vikings fan, for those of you who are perhaps hoping that, despite my Minnesota roots, I would be, let's say, I don't know, a Packers fan or something silly like that, I'm gonna have to disappoint you a little bit. But I, am glad that you have such passion and such ardor for what you're doing. So, what are some other fun ones? Who is your favorite saint? That was another nice one. So, I think there's a handful that come to mind. I do have a great fondness and appreciation for my own patron. So St. Robert Bellarmine was a Jesuit theologian, cardinal, big figure in what we call the Counter-Reformation, the area right after the Reformation when Luther came along and the various other reformers, and just a towering mind. And not that I, in any way would compare myself to him, but I just appreciate his insight into the richness of the faith and his desire to share it, to put it forth, to help people understand the richness of God's love for us. On a similar vein, another one of my favorites is St. Ignatius Loyola, who is the founder of the Jesuits and who had such a profound experience of God's love for him and has left us such a great legacy in the church in terms of his own insights into how God works in our lives. He has provided us with a great tool of what we call discernment. As many of you know, I was in seminary work for the past 10 years. And throughout seminary work, we're very, very often looking at, how to discover God's will for my life. And Ignatius has bequeathed us a great toolbox, I guess, maybe I would say, really, of ways to discover how God is sort of nudging us along and assisting us in discovering how he wants us to open ourselves up ever more to his love, because fundamentally that's his will for our life. Oh, here's another one. Here's another lovely one. What has surprised you most during your time as rector? So again, as I mentioned, I'm relatively recently arrived to this post. I've been here a month, and I'm going to give a response that is going to seem so utterly pandering. I just got to name that off the top before I actually articulate it. But it's so honest too. I have honestly been surprised by how much I have been enriched, how much I have enjoyed this role. I kind of knew I would, I expected to. I was excited for the opportunity to come to St. John's and to be able to minister and be part of this community. And so, I'm not surprised that I'm enjoying it, but it's been such an uplifting and enriching experience for me that I've really been very blessed and very grateful for it. And I was thinking about this yesterday, that very often now in my personal times of prayer, there's a great spontaneous expression of gratitude to all of you and to all who have helped make me feel at home and part of this community. So that's been marvelous as well. And here's a lovely one that I think I'm going to wrap with. And again, there's more coming, don't worry. So if your question did not get answered, don't be disappointed. And I'm actually going to combine two. So I love these two. How does one stay positive in a world that is marked by so much hurt? And I think the reason I'm combining these is I think they can go together. How do we stay focused? How do we stay grounded? Where is our ballast as we stumble through the darkness of these words? It's a great word, ballast. And I would have basically a one-word response to that. Actually, I suppose it's a two-word response, frankly, but one of the words is just the article, the resurrection. Because as we look at the risen Christ, what we see is the triumph of love, the triumph of light, the triumph of God's grace. And what's also beautiful is as we look at the risen Christ, we look at a Christ who still has his wounds. There's something very mysterious about that. There's something very profound about the fact that even in the glorified state, Jesus has his wounds. What does that tell us? It's telling us that the wounds, the hurt that we bear, it is real. The resurrection isn't a message that says we're just kind of undoing what has come before. And so it encourages us, yes, to look at the reality of the struggle and the hurt and the pain, but then it also grounds us in the recognition that it comes to an end, thanks to the gift of the resurrection. That's where we find then that grounding, that ballast, because in the risen one, we see that the hurt, the pain, the darkness comes to an end. And we look to him who is right now, at this very moment, as you're watching this video, as I'm saying these words, the risen one is seated at the right hand of the Father, looking at you, looking at me, eager to lift us up, eager to recognize, the burdens, the struggles, the crosses that we're carrying, but also eager to comfort us with the awareness that he has something so much greater, so much more profound, so much richer, so much glorious in store beyond any cross that we might be bearing this day. And so that's how we stay grounded. That's how we stay positive, not simply by, some sort of Pollyanna-ish optimism, but in looking at the reality of the resurrection, that empty tomb, the reality that Christ's triumph is assured. It's already been won, and he offers each and every one of us a share in that. And so that's just a sampling of the questions we received. As I say, stay tuned, there's more to come. And in the meantime, blessings and prayers as we continue the journey of holiness together.